Okay, good morning. We'll make a start. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gerard O'Sullivan. I'm head of the Department of Technology Enhanced Learning. Today's session is going to be in two parts. I'm going to talk for a little while about what plagiarism is and say a little bit about what to do about it. And that will be by way of contextualizing and giving you some kind of concepts, I suppose, for the more technical bits that Roisin is going to cover, which will revolve around a demonstration of the Turnitin system. So there you have the overview in a little bit more detail. I'll talk about what plagiarism is. I'll be suggesting a kind of a continuum or matrix of plagiarism, which actually ties in quite well with CIT's policy on the matter. Talk about how to maybe respond to different kinds of plagiarism. Talk about assessment strategies for preventing it. And then tell you a little bit about Turnitin and CIT, and then we're over to Roisin for that demo or safari, online safari of things. Okay, so what is plagiarism, and why do we want to detect it if we're talking about plagiarism detection? What is it about plagiarism that suggests we should go about detecting it? Well, it has to do with wrongful appropriation, or the taking of something as your own. And so it has kind of connotations right from the get-go, and in its etymology of stealing and theft and kidnapping, as you see there. In the academic world, we see it almost as a kind of a moral failing, a form of dishonesty. And as such, it's seen as something that should be punished. So software solutions like Turnitin, and Turnitin isn't the only software solution for this purpose, but software solutions like Turnitin allow us, in theory at least, to find evidence of plagiarism, to find evidence of this academic crime. But I suppose I'll be suggesting that we shouldn't be trying to catch or punish, but to educate. And also, I suppose we can think of occurrences of feedback sometimes as having a formative function for us, maybe telling us how we could be doing things a little bit better. In terms of the kind of the official line on things, these are, I've written official CIT definitions. I suppose they're more like official CIT examples of plagiarism. So these are from the student regs. I won't read through them all, but I will make one note and say that, you know, this is obviously a pretty extensive list. Plagiarism is a pretty broad church, as it were. And I think some of these things are worse than others, if you like. If we're still thinking of it as being a crime, then some of these crimes are more serious than others. So, you know, you could neglect to maybe properly acknowledge, say, I don't know, a two-sentence quotation or something like that in your 2,000-word essay. You know, so there's something in there that was written by somebody else, but you failed to kind of acknowledge that fact. But, you know, it's only 20 words in a 2,000-word essay. And maybe you have lots of other quotes that you correctly attributed. So perhaps it's just an oversight. So that doesn't seem too serious. Could happen to the best of us, as it were. Maybe though, maybe you, or not you, maybe somebody self-plagiarized a paragraph from something else that they wrote. That doesn't seem too bad either. Although it is strongly frowned upon in academic circles, in academic writing circles. On the other hand, though, you can imagine somebody who took something that somebody else wrote in its entirety and submitted all of it as their own, and did so, obviously, in full knowledge of what they were doing. So that seems like a more serious crime, if, as I say, we're still thinking of this thing as being a crime. So in building up a little kind of matrix of plagiarism, this is my axis. Okay, so this is the x-axis, where we say, look, some plagiarism is minor in the sense that it involves minor stuff, granular stuff like misusing quotes, paraphrasing without acknowledgement, that kind of thing. Extreme, though, would be something like a downloaded essay, or however you got the essay, somebody else's work submitted as your own, and yeah, so that would be extreme. So I was going to say something about intention, and then I remembered that's my other axis. So the other axis, the y-axis, if you like, and I'll put the two beside each other in a second, relates to intention. So, it could be that you've used the work of others by mistake, kind of, you didn't really mean it, or you don't understand fully the academic conventions of these things. I've certainly had students who, I think, anyway, genuinely felt that, when they were reading something, that this thing they were reading really seemed to represent what they truly thought about it. So it was kind of okay for them to maybe take it and put it in. It's not, of course, but the intention wasn't entirely malign, if you like. On the more extreme end, anyway, of this intention continuum, we could talk about people deliberately, very deliberately, representing the work of others as their own. Now, if we make a matrix, as I say, out of this, where we have extent of plagiarism on the one hand, and then intent on the other axis, we can begin to think maybe about appropriate and proportionate responses to places where these two things intersect. So, I mean, we could talk about plagiarism being very extreme in its extent. So an entire something has been submitted as somebody's own work when it wasn't. And then we could talk about that being entirely deliberate. So, maybe have a look at that and let me know. Well, don't let me know, just have a think. There isn't enough time to make it into an interactive thing, and it's not necessary anyway, but maybe have a think for yourself about what you would put behind each of those boxes. Okay, and so here, according to Devlin anyway, is what the appropriate response would be. So the worst breach is extreme extent and extreme intent, and so the advice then is to penalize quickly and appropriately. The more the most minor is this intersection of very low extent, so it was only part of something bigger that was submitted, and very low in terms of intent, being entirely accidental. So one might be tempted to even ignore that outright, but it is an opportunity to focus on education and explaining expectations and conventions. I've put up a kind of a screenshot there of what's known as CIT's policy governing academic honesty, plagiarism, and infringement, mostly to remind myself of what it's actually called. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but also to remind me to say that what I just showed you there is remarkably close, really, and possibly inspired CIT's own policy on these matters. So I don't want to go into any detail, but I can take questions afterwards about it if people wish. But there is a statement in there in that policy that says the assessment of plagiarism, the assessment of its seriousness, depends on two factors: the impact and the intent. And then finally, I suppose just as I have raised it, the ways in which to deal with it are three. You can notify and educate where the plagiarism has a low or medium impact or is unintended or accidental. You can apply a penalty where the plagiarism has medium to high impact and or is deliberate, or you can refer things to the infringement board, where the plagiarism is high impact and deliberate. So pretty good articulation with what Devlin had first there. Before passing you over to Roisin, just a few maybe closing remarks on strategies for preventing plagiarism from happening in the first place. And I think this maybe works well in terms of thinking about what the so-called originality reports that you get out of Turnitin, thinking about what you might do about them, and thinking about how they might feed back into, well, in the first case anyway, your assessment design process, and in the second case, how you talk about assessment, how you share your expectations with students in terms of things like academic writing, scholarship, academic integrity, honesty, etc. So one of the best ways, I think, to combat plagiarism is, in a sense, proactively with your assessment kind of design approaches. So changing assessment topics frequently is an obvious one. So, this helps with what we might call inter-year student-to-student plagiarism. So, I mean, if you're setting the same essay every single year, there's going to be a greater probability year on year that some first-class honours essays are going to start circulating. Another thing is to ask for analysis and evaluation, not solely, anyway, description and presentation of information. So the web itself is full of description and presentation. If you look for description, people may be tempted or may find a Wikipedia article a good fit, for example. Analysis and evaluation is harder to do and harder to come by, especially if it's linked to other stuff that you've covered, like other theories or frameworks or other contexts, indeed, which is close to the third point there about relating topics to specific content and the focus of the module. So it seems like an obvious point, but sometimes, and I'm an offender here myself, we provide, maybe quite generic assessment briefs, essay titles, report titles, descriptions, and leave it to the student to link these up with the specificities of the module. So the advice there is to make it specific to the module. Asking the student to integrate theory or anything else for that matter with their personal experience is a very good way to block student-to-student plagiarism, and also so-called essay mills or essay banks. Making it a kind of a stepped process where you get to see steps along the way to the final submission, where you get to see it being put together bit by bit, is obviously a way of guarding against certain kinds of plagiarism also. Annotated bibliography is where you look for a list of sources or texts with descriptions and evaluative comments from the students. So again, hard to find that ready-made somewhere out there. And then I suppose the last point from me, which Harris somehow misses out on, is to just consider other assessment methods like presentation or project or learning diary or what have you. So it's very hard to plagiarize a learning diary. It's very hard to get somebody else to do it for you. It's very hard, but not impossible, when one does hear stories, to get someone else to make a presentation on your behalf. You could also think about combining things. So maybe students still submit some written piece of work, but perhaps they have to make an oral defense or make some presentation around it as well. Okay, so hopefully that's of use. I'm looking at the time here, so I'll just kind of crack on. In terms of education, it's really about, and I think we all need to take responsibilities for it. There are generic modules like the CIT module in particular, and I know the library does a lot of great work in terms of educating students about this stuff, but I think we all need at least to be emphasizing, skills of summarizing and paraphrasing correctly, of doing critical reading, of building an argument and marshalling evidence, and obviously referencing and citation. So try to see a tool like Turnitin as feeding into those steps, to see Turnitin as an educational tool, not a way to catch the student out. And speaking of Turnitin, just a very final slide from me now, just to tell you a little bit about where it sits and its history in CIT. So Turnitin, as many of you may know, is still something of an industry standard in terms of plagiarism detection. It's been on the go since 1997, and one of its big advantages, probably as a business, up until recently anyway, has been the number of student submissions that it has on its databases. So over time, it has built up this vast corpus of student work and badly paraphrased Wikipedia articles. And that, I suppose, is one of its big business advantages. It's been in use in CIT since, I think, 2010. It was in the it was in the Crawford School of Art and Design first, and then became available more widely. It operated for a long time separately to our learning management system, which was Blackboard up until 2018. It was Blackboard, although previously it had been WebCT. But anyway, Turnitin in use in CIT since 2010, but we didn't integrate it into the learning management system until 2013. We have since, as people will be aware, changed to Canvas. We changed over to Canvas in essentially September 2018, and we integrated Turnitin directly into it. Now, fair warning, we have been obliged under procurement rules to run a tendering process for an institute plagiarism detection system. That is currently happening. There's going to be a request for tenders issuing, I believe, within the next week or two. The outcome of that process might be a change in our plagiarism detection software, or we may end up with Turnitin. I certainly can't prejudge the outcome of a procurement process, but just giving you fair warning, a change may be on the way. But everything I've said is still going to be relevant, and much of what Roisin says will be relevant, because these systems tend to work in much the same way, in part, I suppose, because Turnitin sort of served as a bit of a template. Now, I usually don't include references in my slides, but given the topic, I said I would do so. So there's some references there as well, and we'll make those slides available on our website. Okay, that's it for me, I think. So over to you, Roisin, if that's okay.
That's no bother. Thanks, Garud. So hi, everyone. I'm just going to spend some time going through Turnitin and Canvas. I won't keep you too long, but just to sort of give you an overview of how to create an assignment, how to access student submissions, and then how to interpret the originality report in Turnitin, just because the settings are a little bit different to the way that you would use sorry, I'm just going to share my screen there. The way that you would set up normal assignments. So if you just give me a moment there now. Okay, so I'm in Canvas at the moment. I'm in a module in Canvas. The way we generally recommend that Turnitin is used is to be sort of transparent with your students. So, tell them you're going to use it and you're not trying to catch them out. And another way is to allow them to view the originality reports themselves, and offer space for them to submit draft assignments so they can use it to improve their writing. Turnitin themselves over the past few years have been really trying to brand themselves more as an aid for improving academic writing skills in general, rather than just being an anti-plagiarism tool, or indeed a tool to try to catch students out. For instance, they've recently included a spelling and grammar check as part of their feedback studio. So this is sort of the approach that we would take as well. Obviously, it won't suit everybody, which is fine, but we've found that by setting up a draft assignment in Turnitin, it also kind of makes the settings a bit more straightforward, as they can be a bit complicated to use if you're trying to do everything in one assignment. Okay, so One other thing to say as well, though, actually, is if you do create a regular assignment and you want to run submissions through Turnitin after the fact, so say if you have a concern about any submissions, you can still do this through turnitin.com. So we have some advice on how to do this on our Knowledge Centre. So if anybody is wondering how to do that, you could take a look, or do indeed get on to us about it. So for this demo, just keeping that in mind in terms of the sort of recommended setup, I'm going to create two assignments. So one will be a draft that students will submit to in order to check their submissions, and then a final assignment area for students to submit to when they're happy with their paper. Now it sounds like it's a bit of a long process, but it's more straightforward this way. So I'm in my assignment section, and I'm just going to click up here at the plus assignment option. Okay, so this gives me my all my settings for my particular assignment. Now for this example, I'm going to set up my final assessment space first. So this will be like my Dropbox for students to submit their final Turnitin assignment. So I'm going to be quite clear about this, so that if I spelt it right, so that students will be able to see exactly where to submit to. So you can, just put in as much guidance as possible. I mentioned about being transparent, so you can, mention this to your students in class, or if you want to do it via an announcement, just to indicate that there's two spaces that they'll be submitting their assignments. Now you can add a description as well. So any sort of content that you want about the actual assignment itself, you can include the assignment brief, and you can include instructions here that the student should be following, particularly with regards to it being a Turnitin assignment. I won't add anything there, but I'll show you one that I already created, so you'll be able to see it. You'll notice here that it's basically the same information you'd be adding to a normal assignment so far anyway. So a lot of you would be familiar with this anyway. In terms of points, I'm going to leave it at 100 because this will be my final assignment. I can put it into an assignment group. So for this one, I'm just going to choose Turnitin, which is just a group that I've set up already. Display grade as points, that's fine. And then I do want to count it towards my final grade, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Now here's where we move over into the Turnitin settings. So under submission type, for a regular assignment, you'd likely have online selected here. But for Turnitin, I'm going to select external tool. And this way I can go and I can find the Turnitin LTI. So if I click on find here, it'll give me a few different options. And if you scroll down, you'll see Turnitin here. So if I click on that and click select, that attaches it to this assessment. So Canvas now knows that I am creating a Turnitin assignment. I'm going to select this option here, load this tool in a new tab. It doesn't matter if you don't select it. It just means that when you load up Turnitin or this assignment, you'll get a little notice, a little button at the bottom of the page saying to open it in a new window. So I'm just going to kind of basically speed up that process by clicking there. Because this is my final assessment, and I'm going to have a draft area for students to submit to, I am going to limit the allowed attempts. So I'm going to put in 2, largely just to cover human error. So I'll imagine that when students are submitting to this final assessment that they're happy with their submission, but people do make mistakes and they might accidentally upload the wrong file or anything like that. So I'm just going to put it at 2 attempts there. I'm going to assign it to everybody, and I'm just going to give it a due date as well. So for this scenario, I'm just going to keep it very simple. My due date for my final assignment is going to be next Friday. So I'll just select that there and click on done. I'm going to leave the availability there because I'm going to allow late submissions, so I don't want to put an end date on it. And I'm also going to have it available straight away because if a student uploads their draft and they're happy with it early on in the week, I want them to be able to submit their final one quick as well. So I'll just leave that open. Now I'm just going to click on save. So far it's pretty much the same as you were setting up a normal assignment. Now this here is where I'm going to have my new browser window. I'm going to add my Turnitin settings. So if I just click here on load final assignment, this will open up a new tab where it'll load up the particular settings for this assignment. So these are the Turnitin ones. So you can see here my title has ported over from my assignment settings that they added just there in Canvas. I have my grade and everything. If I want to add any instructions here, so anything like that I want to add. One thing to note here in terms of the due date, so this again is coming from the settings that I set there just previously. In terms of feedback release date, I'm going to set this, I'm just going to click on the calendar icon here, and I'm just going to set it to the end of the year, just because if you put in any feedback to your Turnitin assignment, depending on the settings you have, it might be available to students. So we always just recommend to put in a long date on that there, just to give you time to actually add in grades and everything like that before you want your students to be able to see them. I'm going to leave that off now at the moment. That's just peer marking, and I'm just going to click here on optional settings. So these are again specific to Turnitin itself. Because this is my final assignment, I can choose where the submitted papers are submitted to. So you have the standard paper repository, which is Turnitin's paper repository. So that would be for the Turnitin servers. You have the institution paper repository. So this would be CIT's one. You have your student's choice of repository. So I'm not sure in what scenario you would choose that, but generally we say either the Turnitin or the CIT one here. Because this is a demo, I'm going to select do not store the submitted papers. But for a real one, I would probably just choose either standard or CIT. Now under here, allow submission of any file type. So I've asked my students to submit as PDF, but I know that some students might still upload it as a Word. So I'm just going to allow any submission type. I'm going to allow late submissions because I have left the accessibility open there. Here I can enable the grammar check. So this is what I was mentioning earlier about they've integrated this recently enough into Canvas. So you can choose settings in terms of it checking the spelling and the grammar for the particular papers. I'm just going to leave that selected because it's not going to make much difference in the end. You can attach a rubric to your assignment as well. So the nice thing about this as well is that when you kind of create a Turnitin assignment in Canvas, you kind of automatically create an account in Turnitin.com. So any rubrics that you create or any quick marks that you create, which we'll look at shortly, they'll all stay attached to your account. So no matter what module you're in Canvas, you'll be able to load any of those rubrics or anything like that. So that can be quite useful. In terms of comparing against the different options here. So basically this allows you to choose what repository you want the submitted papers to be compared against. So Turnitin basically checks submitted paper it checks submitted work for potential unoriginal content. So it compares submissions to various sources. So here we have the student paper repository, we've got institution one. So this would be again Turnitin's or CIT's paper repositories. We've got current and archived website content and periodicals, journals, and publications. So I'm going to keep all of these selected because I want Turnitin to check against all of that. Here, the similarity report. So this is this can often be referred to as the originality report. You'll have heard Grode mention it as well there. Basically, this is the report that will be generated to show any of these comparisons or anything like that. So you have a few different options here. Because this is my final assessment, I'm going to say generate reports on the due date. So I've left it as 2 submissions possible, so students can resubmit until then, but they won't see the similarity reports until the due date. I will have expected them, as I mentioned, to have submitted to the draft area. So I'm going to leave that setting as it is. I'm going to allow the students to view the report because, again, this is all about kind of them improving their academic writing. And then down here, I have some filter options. So I'm going to ignore these for the moment because I can change these again afterwards. So this is just a way of kind of excluding quoted materials or small sources or bibliographic materials from the originality report there. I have an option as well then to save these settings for future use. So this might be handy if you want to create a lot of Turnitin assignments. I'm going to click on submit there. So that will save all my settings for that final assessment. Now I'm going to jump out again and I'm going to, if I click on my assignment inbox, you'll see that there's nothing there. So this is the area that any of the submissions will show up in. And this will be the same for students as well. They'll have this sort of assignment area as well. Now I'm just going to go back into my module and I'm going to go back into assignments. And now I'm just going to create my draft assignment. So if I click on plus assignment here, I'll be doing the same process here, but I'm just going to be very clear that this is draft assignments. And then whatever sort of distinguishable information you want to add in there. I'm just going to kind of fly through this now, just based on the time. So again, well, I'm actually going to change this to 0 points because this isn't going to be marked towards the final grade. This is just going to be a kind of a testing area for the students themselves. In the assignment group, I'm just going to change to Turnitin. And I'm going to choose my external tool and Turnitin here as well. Now, in terms of allowed attempts, I'm going to keep this at unlimited because I'm going to allow my students to just keep submitting to this. And assign everywhere. I'm going to put a due date as the Thursday before. So actually, no, I'll leave it at the Friday in terms of just being able to kind of keep the two areas separate. But just if somebody wants to submit on Friday at 11 and they want to keep submitting their drafts that morning, I'll leave it at that. But in terms of the availability, then I'm going to remove this at this date here because while students will be submitting their assignments late, I don't want them to be using the draft area after the actual deadline for that assignment. I'll click on save here. And now I'm going to add my assignment settings for this. So here I have my draft assignments, I have my date and everything like that, my feedback release, just for, I suppose, consistency, I'm going to change that to the end as well. So for instance, if you wanted to be able to give your students some feedback on their draft reports, you can leave that date a lot sooner. If you want to be able to help your students with their drafts or anything like that, it's an idea to change that. But for this one, I'm just going to put the feedback release date a lot later. Under optional settings here, I'm going to change just a couple of things here. Again, I'm going to choose do not store the submitted papers, not just because this is a demo, but because this is the draft. So if I had selected standard paper repository, for instance, the student's final paper will be matched against their draft that they've already submitted. So I'm just going to choose do not store the submitted papers. So I would be choosing that setting for any draft assignment that I set up. I'm not going to allow late submissions. I'm going to leave everything else there as is. I'm still going to compare against all the different repositories because, again, I want the students to be able to see any sources that come up. And down here under generate similarity reports, I'm going to keep it at generate reports immediately so students can resubmit until the due date. Now there is one thing to note. After a few submissions, they say 3 here, it might take the reports up to 24 hours to generate. The reason for that is that Turnitin overwrites any previous submissions. This is also something that can be quite useful to mention to your students if they are a bit nervous about submitting drafts that they don't feel are ready and they feel that you might be having a look at their drafts or anything like that. You know, it's something to mention to them that anything that they've previously uploaded will be overwritten. So it might just put them at ease a small bit. I'm going to allow them to view their similarity reports. And again, I'm just going to leave those filters as they are at the moment. I'll just click on submit here. Okay, so now I have my two Turnitin assignments created here. So if I go down here, I'll see them here. They're not published yet, so I'm just going to leave them as they are because I want to show you the sort of ones that I've previously set up. So if I click here under Turnitin draft assignments, so this is one that I set up yesterday, you'll see that I have a little bit of information added there in terms of the assignment description. But if I click on load the draft assignments in a new window, this is showing me my assignment inbox for this particular module. So I can see that there's 2 students who have submitted reports to this. So I have my student name here. I have the paper title. I have a paper ID as well. So this would be useful now when the paper is like stored in any repository, or if there's any issues with any paper and you might want to contact Turnitin about it or anything. The date and time that it was uploaded, whether or not it has been viewed yet. Here now is where I would be able to click into to add any grades or feedback. And then the similarity index, so this percentage here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click to open this. So I'm going to click on this file here that has 1%. This is just something that a report that we actually that's from a European project that I just grabbed there earlier. So I'm not surprised by that percentage. So if I just click on the similarity index here, it should open up in a new window. Okay, so this is just one of the PDFs that I got off our site. This is the feedback studio that we were talking about earlier. So the way that Turnitin have sort of evolved their product is they've actually put the originality report and the feedback studio and the grammar check and everything all in one place. And it's basically done by layers. So if you click on any of these areas here, it shows the different parts of it. So the red section here is for the originality report or the similarity index or anything like that. This blue section here is for your feedback. And this kind of purple section here is for your grammar. So it's all sort of done in layers, and you can turn on and off the different layers. So if you wanted to add feedback, but you also wanted to see any sources show up on the page as well, you can do it. You can have them all show up at the same time, and then they'll be color coded then throughout it. So you can see here that these purple notes here, they're to do with the grammar check. So anything like that is highlighted over here on the left, which is the actual document that was uploaded, the submission from the student. Over here on the right, you have a little breakdown then of the various kind of spelling or grammar issues, things to highlight over here. For the originality report, there was a 1% match for it. So generally, you would be looking at percentages, I suppose, in around 15 to 20, depending. But some, as you've seen when I opened up my assignment index, were up at 98%. So Turnitin are very careful to say that this originality report is just basically a tool to help the instructor find sources that contain text similar to submitted papers. So there's no CIT policy in terms of what percentage constitutes the need for further examination by a lecturer. It's really just to be used as an aid. So if you were looking at a regular assignment, for instance, a regular assignment submission, if you had any concerns, you would probably like copy and paste the section into Google or something like that to see if there's a match. With this, Turnitin essentially does that for you. We refer to this process as interpreting the originality report because it's to be used as an aid. Turnitin basically can't tell you if something was deliberate or accidental. So like Grode was discussing earlier about minor or extreme or unintentional or intentional, this won't be decided or suggested by Turnitin. It's really just to offer you a quick way of finding the similarities. so if you've clicked on the actual originality index or the similarity index, you will get your sources over here on the right, and then anything then will be kind of highlighted over here. Now, we were looking earlier about excluding bibliographic material and everything like that, or excluding quotes. So this is quite useful to filter, because sometimes a turn of phrase might be flagged as being kind of similar or anything like that. So a very common turn of phrase. So if we decide to exclude quotes and exclude bibliographic material, and then exclude sources that are less than, say, maybe 3 or 5 words or anything like that, we can often, sorry, 51, we can often change the similarity index and then kind of change how someone would actually view the submitted paper. If I made any changes here, I can click on apply changes, and sometimes then it will actually change the percentage that shows up here. There's different ways, like, so if you click here on this item here, it'll show you all of the sources that Turnitin has found maybe some similarity. Again, you have your filter option there, and then you can kind of turn it off then as well for any excluded sources or anything like that. So you can actually kind of look at the report and say, oh, look, that's actually fine, I understand that, and you can exclude it from the index. So it can be quite handy to be able to, again, interpret the student submission. The other thing I want to show you quite quickly, just looking at the time, is this feedback studio here. So if I click up here on quick marks, this is a nice way of being able to provide feedback to your students. So this is a draft assignment that my student has uploaded. And so what I can do is I can actually give them some comments or feedback about it. I mentioned earlier about that you can attach rubrics, or you can attach what are referred to as quick marks. And they're basically a method of you sort of saving any common feedback that you might be using throughout your correcting. So if I want to, for instance, make a comment about some part of the student submission, I can select the paragraph here. And if I click on one of these items, then I can add some feedback. So the first one here indicates quick marks. So if I click on that, I can choose some sample feedback records that Turnitin have available, or else I can click on my own ones. And here are ones that I've saved. So these are sort of quick quick marks, quick feedback that I can add to it. So I can say here, well, look, I want the student to expand on this area. I can add a different comment here. So that gets attached then to that particular area. So the feedback all gets added into this document. If I add any kind of feedback on the fly, so if I add a comment here by clicking on this speech bubble here, I can add my feedback here as well. And I can either just save it as a general comment, or else I can convert it to a quick mark as well there. So it'll all be a way of kind of building up your bank of feedback that you add to your submissions. You also have the option to be able to add a general comment to the overall paper. So you can do this with a voice comment. So you can record a quick kind of 3-minute of general feedback, audio feedback, or else you can write some general comments here as well. And those will then get attached to the actual document as well. You have some options here in terms of being able to download this document. So you can download the original submission, or else you can download the submission that has all this kind of feedback and everything that is saved with it. And then you get some information then as well, if you click on this information icon, about the submission date and everything like that, and the word count and all of that information about that particular document. Okay, so that's quite a kind of a quick look at the feedback studio in Turnitin in Canvas. So we have our feedback studio kind of items in blue here, and our originality report or our similarity index in the red options here. If I want to give the student a grade, I can. Like, this is because this is a draft assignment, it's out of 0 here, but I can just quickly kind of add a grade up there if I want, and then I can actually move between students by using these arrows here. So this will load up the other students' document here. So this is just one I just grabbed from a European project that we had. So that's why the similarity index is at 98% there. So I'm just going to close that down there for a second now. Now I'm just going to pop over very quickly just before we finish into the student view. So I'm just going to close that down. Click on my student view. And if I go into my assignments here, so the student view is quite similar to the view that you just saw there, except if you have the feedback turned off, or if you have it at a later date, they won't see that kind of layer on it. So if I just go into my draft assignments. Okay, I'm actually going to, sorry, if you just excuse me for a second, I'm just going to jump into one of the actual students' accounts. So this is one of our test students. Okay, so if I go into my assignments here, because I've previously submitted something, and I click on my Turnitin draft assignments, I can see my submission details and everything like that, and I'll see my similarity index. And when I click on that, it'll open up the same sort of information that we were just looking at from a student's perspective. So I had added a general comment to this particular submission, so I can see that this is available here. So this is the general comment for the entire paper, but you can see that any other options aren't there, like the quick marks or anything like that aren't showing up. There's no grade or anything on it, but I as a student can view the similarity report, and I can have a look at the sources, and I can filter as well based on the filter options that were there as well. I also have my spelling and grammar check. And if my lecturer has added any feedback here, I can also download the report with all the feedback attached to it, or else I can download the original submission that I had included there as well. Okay, so bit of a quick tour of Turnitin and Canvas there as well. If you're looking for more information, we have some information here in our help center. There's a few articles about creating Turnitin assignments and then submitting a Turnitin assignment on behalf of your students. So I mentioned earlier that you can do that in turnitin.com. So this will offer you a bit of information about how to do it, how to log into turnitin.com, and then create your assignment and submit on behalf of the student. Okay, thanks very much. I'll hand you over to Garode again there, maybe just to finish off.
Okay, thanks William for that, Roisin. Really comprehensive, as always. I don't know if there's any questions. I might give people a moment on YouTube if they want to post anything. I just have an eye on it here. But if not, we're always available. team@cit.ie, and we'll be posting this video afterwards in case you want to review any of those details. So just give people another moment or two there. I'd say we'll finish up, Roisin. It's nearly midday on a Friday. The sun is outside. I'd say people want to be on their way. So look, folks, thanks a million for coming along, and thank you, Roisin, for your presentation and help in putting this all together.